Hey everybody, Dave here from Dave Tries to Fix Stuff, channel dedicated to the repair, restoration, and resurrection of broken stuff. And in this episode, I'm going to be servicing and restoring this late 40s, early 1950s Gibson BR-6 tube amp. There's a little bit of a bittersweet story behind this one, so stick around and I'll tell you all about it. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Let's go ahead and dive in. I picked this amplifier up from a really nice lady off of OfferUp. Her husband was a musician. They used to live in Nashville, they moved here a few years back. And as it turned out, the gentleman unfortunately passed away, and she was starting to kind of thin out his collection of musical equipment. This is one of the things she was willing to let go. And knowing that I was somebody that tried to restore this type of equipment, wasn't just looking to, buy it and just turn around and flip it. I was actually going to try and get it back into good working order and make sure that it represented something that her husband would probably still want to play. Made her very happy to sell it to me. So I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to let her know what kind of work that I do, and that she could rest assured that this thing would be taken care of and would be in good hands. Well, why don't we go ahead and I'll take you on a little tour of the amplifier. We'll see, we'll do a little bit of a sound test at first so you can see what's wrong with it, and then we'll take things from there. So like I said, it is a late 40s, early 50s amplifier, so it's seen quite a bit of use out there. As you can see, it's got the usual rash, Tolex rash, whatever you want to call it, going across here. It's fairly dirty. You can see it's got a lot of stuff actually in the grain of the Tolex. It's got the usual cigarette burns and things like that. There's not going to be a lot I can do about that, but I do believe I should be able to clean this Tolex up and get a lot of this stuff off of there. It's not going to look like new, obviously, but it will look a lot better than what it is. I may try my trick that I did with the Airline amplifier and actually try to glue the frayed edges of the Tolex down a little bit, and maybe try to come up with a dye that I can dye both the strands of this thing and maybe the bare wood pieces to try to make it look a little more uniform in these areas as opposed to looking so ragged. As far as the handle, you can see it's falling apart here. It's got electrical tape around it, so I would definitely, I want to replace it. The only thing is that I do believe that even though it's covered in electrical tape, this is the original handle. And plus the fact that the supports here, the brackets that hold the handle on, are the original brackets, and they are actually riveted to this thing. So if I want to replace this handle, I would probably end up having to drill these rivets out, and I don't know if that's something that I want to do. I'm going to have to think on that part before I make a decision on it, but I'll come back to that. The grill cloth is actually in decent shape. It could use a cleaning. I can see it's got some spots on it and a little bit of there's really no rips. I mean, there's a little bit of loosening of the weave right here, it looks like, but I will see if there's a way that I could very carefully try to get that cleaned up and maybe get that back to as original as possible. We will see on that. And if we turn this around, you can see that it still has the original two-prong, well, it's actually not even the original two-prong plug. It's got a two-prong plug. It was, at one point, the plug was cut or broke or something like that. You can see it has actually exposed wires right here. So that's really not safe at all. But somebody, just probably twisted some wires onto the old one and then put some electrical tape on it. So I'm going to be changing that out to a three-prong cord just to be safe. You can see that this back panel is probably the most most in need of some TLC. the Tolex is basically been just disintegrated across most of it. And again, that leaves me with a quandary. Do I want to just leave this as close as possible? A lot of these that I've seen, actually, this is missing. This panel right here is missing. So I obviously I have it. This is the original panel. I don't know if I want to try to even mess with getting this thing fixed up. I know I don't want to replace Tolex, because a lot of times that's what usually makes these things less valuable. But if I can somehow clean up the Tolex that's on here and try to dye the wood, the bare wood, a little bit to make it look a little more uniform, I might try that. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So. But looking at the control panel, you can see it has 2 instrument inputs, and it's got a single volume control here, on-off switch, and a fuse. As far as the tube complement, I'm not 100% sure of what's in here, as I haven't had a chance to really look at the schematic yet. I think this has, this might be like a 6SJ7 or maybe an SC7. This is a 6SN7, I think, a couple of 6V6s and a 5Y3. I'll verify that, obviously, once I start doing the servicing on it. And then it's got an old field coil speaker in here. You can usually tell the field coils because they have extra runs of wires that come from the B+ to, you know, quote unquote, power the speaker. So we'll look a little bit more closely at that too. But anyway, it would appear that I have some decisions to make as far as what I want to do with this. Do I want to, you know, replace the handle? Do I want to fix the back panel? I'm not 100% sure exactly what I'm going to want to do with it. One thing I do know is that it does not, it's got some hum in it. I will plug it in just a second here and give you, so you can hear what it is, but it's usually, well, here, you know, let's go ahead and plug it in now, because I don't even think I need to plug in a, just give it a second to warm up. I can already kind of hear hum, a decent amount of hum from the transformer. But there you go, you can hear it's got some hum, it's popping. And if it does what it did before, it might have a pretty big pop that comes in. I don't know if it's going to or not, but it's definitely going to be in need of some servicing. So why don't we go ahead and get it on the bench, and we'll start getting the chassis out of there, and we'll see what needs to be fixed. Okay, so I'm taking off the back panel here, and the first thing that I noticed is that it's missing a screw, but also I've got 2 screws that are flatheads and 1 that is Phillips head. So that's really not all that uncommon on something this old, but at the same time it does make for, if I'm trying to restore this thing, I'm going to have to, you know, I'm wondering if flatheads actually might have been on this originally. I don't know. Usually on something like this, it'll be Phillips head. Flatheads weren't normally used on something like this. Plus the fact that these are pan heads, where they're flat on the bottom with a rounded top, makes me think that they weren't original. This one, which is has a, you know, a countersunk head and a little bit of an oval, that's probably the only original one that's left. So I'll probably try to find some new ones that match this particular type of screw. So, but take this off, and we got all kinds of fun little dust bunnies in here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Down in there, all kinds of fun crap. Back here too, on this side, there's all kinds of stuff down the back. So there's definitely going to be some cleaning in our future when it comes to this thing. So, okay, I thought I would. Normally, I would just take out the chassis and leave the speaker in and just use my test speaker to test this stuff. But since my test speaker doesn't have anything in it that is the same as a field coil, these work differently than a traditional speaker, and I'll go over that in just a little bit too, how the field coil works a little bit differently than the other speakers. So using my speaker would not give me a good indication of whether or not this thing is fixed. So, but there's a code on the side here. Let's see if I can get you to... Shows is 285-942. 285, I'm pretty sure, is a Rolla. I just dealt with one of those recently. And 942 is the 42nd week. I'm going to say that's the 42nd week of 1949, not 1959. So let's put my camera back, and I pressed the power button by mistake. Anyway, like I was saying, this is I can almost guarantee in 1949. Not 1959, because they really moved away. They had moved away from field coils by the time 1959 rolled around. So, anyway, what I was going to say though about the speaker, the field coil speaker, the reason these field coil speakers work differently is the fact that a normal or a traditional speaker uses a permanent fixed magnet in order to drive the voice coil, to get the sound out of it. Field coils actually utilize electromagnetic energy. It's an electromagnetic magnet in there that has to be supplied power from the high voltage in there in order to create the electromagnetic field for the field coil to get pushed. Or, I'm sorry, for the voice coil to get pushed. So, but that's the reason why you can't use normal speakers the same. You can't use the circuit the same way. I mean, I could theoretically remove the voice coil, but I would have to get a different output transformer and all that kind of stuff to get this to work correctly. So, okay, let's get it turned over and see what we have on the underside. Yep, this thing is looking like it is all original, which is not surprising to me at all. Lots of dust bunnies in here. Okay. Okay, so I've been having a little bit of a time trying to find a schematic that fits this one. I can see they've got a Gibson BR-6 schematic here, and then a Gibson BR-6F schematic here. The problem with these is that neither one of them really fits the amplifier exactly. This BR-6, although it's got the two instrument inputs, this shows the inputs coming in, going directly to a potentiometer, and then splitting off and going to the two halves of a triode, the two triode halves of a 6S C7. And the thing is, I'm looking at this thing closely, and if you look at it, you can see that this has two gain stages in there. This particular, this is the SC7, right? Yeah. This is the 6SN7, which is a dual triode, and this is a 6SC7, which is also a dual triode. So I know that should be what I've got there. The problem is that my amplifier that I'm looking at doesn't do this. What it does is it comes in from these two input stages and actually goes parallel into the gain stages first, and then comes out of the gain stage into this potentiometer, and then goes to the 6SN7. The other one that I'm looking at here shows that it goes into the tube first, but this is a 6SJ7, which is a pentode. So this is obviously not the same tube remotely. So, but other than that, I mean, this looks all the same, other than that tube being different. So I don't know how difficult it's going to be to come up with the right Let's take a closer look at the chassis and see what we have here. So, looking at this, I can see that you've got on both of these inputs, you've got the tabs here, you know, what they contact with the tips, actually come out here, and they go into these 100K resistors that then go in parallel and connect, and they go to the grid of the first stage. And then this one is actually connected in parallel with the other grid of that stage. And then you've got the two, these are the two cathodes right here of the two of them, which then come over here to get biased with this resistor and this bypass cap. And then these are the plates here, which you've got power coming in from over here to the first plate, going to the second plate as well. And then you've got this coming through this coupling cap and then coming into this this tab on the potentiometer, which then comes out of the wiper going to the next one. So this is all in parallel. So in some ways it's kind of similar to that schematic, but in other ways it's obviously different. I actually prefer to have the potentiometer between a gain stage and the next gain stage. I don't like having the potentiometer right up front. Only because when you do that, there's no reason for it. If I want to control the actual input signal coming into an amp, I can just turn down the volume pot on the guitar itself. So this just seems superfluous and redundant. We don't need it there. But I like being able to have the full, however much of the signal come into that first stage and then control from there to the next stage. You can really come up with some different dynamic possibilities doing that. So I do like this design better, but I'm probably not going to worry too much about the schematic. I think all I'm going to do is just do a basic service on this anyway, which means I'll be changing out all these capacitors that are in here. We have a cap right here, got a really big resistor right there. So that's nice. It's a high wattage resistor, but I'm going to replace these caps. I'll replace the coupling caps over here. I will replace the capacitors right here, which are on the power rail, these filter caps. And once I get all that done, I imagine that this is probably going to start sounding really good again, and then I can just concentrate on getting everything cleaned up. I don't think the service is going to be a huge deal on this. I think it's going to be pretty simple, and just replacing these capacitors here. So, and obviously cleaning out the pot and cleaning out the input jacks and all that too. So I will get on that, and we will go from there. So I may have spoken a little bit too soon when I said that this thing was unmolested. I'm looking at this. You can see this is supposed to be I guess it's supposed to be a grounding spot. The thing is, all this soldering right here is extremely messy and extremely, I mean, you know, it's picking off right there. This is not factory soldering. If it was factory soldering, I'd be very surprised. Not to mention the fact that what's attached to this is this right here, which goes actually inside of, let's back out just a little bit, you can see, goes inside the transformer. And I don't know if that's supposed to be the center winds on this, the center taps coming out to go to ground, which it's quite possible. I mean, I can't see what else that would be other than center taps on it. But those should have some kind of insulation on them coming out. And I don't like the fact that they don't. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some black wire and strip the insulation off of some black wire and see if I can get some insulation around these things, and then probably extend them a little bit because these things are fairly taut. It looks like somebody disconnected them, they were shortened somehow, and now they just barely make it to this spot. So it seems like they need to have a little bit extra on there. So what I'll do is I'll desolder them, get some insulation around them, add a little bit more wire to the end, put some shrink tubing around all of that, and then get them resoldered correctly to this thing. And I'm going to end up removing this anyway, so I'm not worried about, you know, having this stuff being taken off. But that is something that I'm going to have to do to get this fixed up. So, all right, let me get to that. Okay, so I was almost done getting all this stuff soldered together and all that, and a little problem has arisen. If you look right here, this is one of the wires that was going to the original multi-section filter cap can, or there's a multi-section cap, not really a can, and the insulation is brittle and is tearing off, and that's just exposed wire right there. So I'm going to end up having to I'm going to have to cut it right there and get the two pieces put back together and then sleeve it with a piece of heat shrink tubing. Okay, so we'll turn this on. We'll start dialing this up a little bit. I'm seeing, oh, signs of life. Uh-oh, that didn't sound good. I also saw a little wisp of smoke over here. I wonder, I heard that before. I never saw the smoke. You know, I don't know if that the funny thing is, this thing is so dusty. I don't know if that's smoke. I'm seeing like so many dust bunnies in here. I'm wondering if that was just like and dust flew off, because I don't smell any smoke. But let's try it again and see what we get here. I have it dimed, by the way. I got this all the way up to 10. Did it again. I wonder what that is. We'll turn this down a little bit. Let's plug in a... This thing is really trebly. I'm going to check some voltages. This thing does not sound quite right. At 414 is what's going to the field coil, it looks like. 322, 323 on one side, nothing on the other. So that's going to ground. Well, so this thing doesn't quite sound right. The voltages seem to be okay in most places. The thing that I'm looking at here is, first of all, like I said, neither of the schematics that I have seem to match up to what I've got in here. The other thing I'm looking at is the fact that these carbon comp resistors on here are not looking very good. They look very deteriorated. Let's see if I can get you a close-up on some of this. mean, if you look at these right here, you can see they just look real, you know. So I'm not debating. I am doubting the accuracy of the impedance and resistance on these things right now. I'm wondering if I am going to have to pull a bunch of these and change them out for better, you know, not better, but ones that are actually functioning at the correct impedance. I'm going to test one of these too. It's hard to test them in circuit because of how this thing is put together. There are so many places where things, you know, cross over and you know, come into contact with other resistors, not directly there, but it affects the level of impedance. So yeah, I mean, this 100K is showing up as 81, which, I mean, 20% spec is about what it's supposed to be, so it shouldn't be horrible. This one is at 117, but, you know, I don't know. Let me, what is this one? This one should be 220 ohms, I think. Is that an orange then? So, okay, so this should be, I think that's an orange. I think it's red, red, orange. So that should be a 2.2. It looked like 3 reds. So that should be a 2.2K. So that's actually not too bad. But like I said, some of these other ones are difficult to see. Are difficult to tell because of how they're put into the circuit. So what is that? That should be, what, a 30K? That's it. Orange, black, and yellow. So orange, black, and yellow should, I think that's right. Orange, black, and yellow should be 30K, I think. And that's at 81K. So, I mean, the last thing I want to do is start changing stuff out that doesn't need to be changed out in here. I mean, the whole point of this is to keep this, you know, as original as possible. But at the same time, when it's sounding, I mean, I'm not expecting this thing to sound like a Marshall, but it does need to have a, it sounded very thin. And yes, I do understand that the speaker's not in the cabinet, but it's probably hard to tell with the microphone on the camera, but this thing is really, really thin sounding. I mean, very, very underwhelming, and it should not sound like that. So, you know, though, it's getting a little bit late for me, so I'm probably going to sleep on this and figure out how I want to proceed with it. If, you know, how I'm going to go about figuring out which one of these I want to change out. You know, because the thing is, like I said, it's tough to actually test some of these in circuit. And it's like, you know, once I unsolder them, I may as well just change them out for a new one, you know. So let me think on it, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. Hey everybody, so I'm looking at this at the video, and I'm realizing that it's already getting pretty long. I've really been concentrating on trying to keep my videos down as far as the length, and I mean, this one's already longer than I want it to be, and I'm only a little over halfway done on the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and call this particular video here, we're going to call this part 1, and I am going to post this one up as is, and then I will get the cleaning of the cabinet and the last couple of things that I get done on the circuit, and final demo, tone demo and all that, in a part 2 video. So thank you for watching this. Please hit subscribe if you are liking what you see. Please click thumbs up if you like what you see, and any comments you have for me, please leave below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.